Standard form. So, standard form is always going to be, we're going to always write our standard form in a times by 10 to the power of n, where a must be a number between 1 and 10. So it has to either be equal to or more than 1, but it has to be less than 10. And n can be a positive or negative integer. Positive or negative integer. Okay, let's see this question here. So it says that we must express this number, so 47,400 in standard form. So remember, standard form is a times by 10 to the power of n, where a must be a number between 1 and 10, and n must be an integer. So what I like to do here is, so in order for this number here to be between 1 and 10, we can see that we have to put our decimal place next to the first 4. So it'll turn into 4.74 essentially. So because we are going to make a bigger number from 4.74, so 4.74 we're going to make that to a bigger number to get 47,400. That means we're going to times by a positive integer. When we're making a number bigger, when we are dealing with big numbers, our integer is going to be positive, but when we are dealing with smaller numbers, so like 0.000003, for instance, our power is going to be a negative number, a negative integer. So to know what our n is going to be, we need to work out how many times we have to move this decimal place to the right. So to get from this 4.74, and I'm going to put the 2 zeros here at the end, to get to 47,400, let's see, we're going to move it. So 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 times to the right. So that n is going to turn into 4. So our final answer is going to be 4.74 times 10 to the power of 4. Okay, now we've got this number here. So because we are dealing with small numbers, that means that when we do our a times 10 to the power of n is going to be a negative integer because we're going to move our decimal place to the left. But what I like to do first is to work out what this a is going to be. Because a needs to be between 1 and 10, that means the only way we can do that is by putting our decimal place next to the 6. So it'll be 6.789. Now we need to work out how many times we need to move our decimal place to the left by. So how many zeros are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I'm just going to write 7 zeros to the left. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Very important to double check, guys. So now let's move our decimal place. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we are going to have to move our decimal place 8 times to the left. meaning that our number is going to be, in standard form, going to be 6.789 times 10 to the power of minus 8. Okay, this one here. Express this standard form in ordinary numbers. So now we're doing the other way round. So this 5 tells us how many times we're moving the decimal place. So this minus 5 here. So first we're going to move it 5 times. And because it's a negative integer, that tells us that we're going to get a small number. So we're going to be moving the decimal place to the left. So let's start off with 5.23. We need to move our decimal place 5 times to the left. So we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Decimal point is here. Then we just add in our zeros. So our answer is going to be 0.00000523. And that is it. Okay, now we're going to look at multiplying and dividing standard form. When we multiply or divide standard forms, we put the front numbers together in one group and the powers of 10 to another group. Then we multiply or divide the front numbers and add the powers of 10s or subtract the powers of 10 in the other group, depending on whether we are dividing or multiplying the standard forms. So let's do an example. So here we have 2 times 10 to the power of 3 times by 6.75 times 10 to the power of 9. Okay, so what we do, so we group the front numbers together, so 2 times by 6.75, and then we group the powers of 10 together, 10 to the power of 3 times by 10 to the power of 9. So first, let's do the left-hand side first. We need to work out what 2 times 6.75 is, which is 13.5. And then to work out what this is, remember our index law. When we have numbers of the same base, we add the powers. So essentially what we're going to do, 3 add 9, which is 12. So times 10 to the power of 12. And that is it. Similar thing with this one, we're dividing. So 2.4 times 10 to the power of minus 6. Divide by 9.6 times 10 to the power of negative 8. Again, we group our front numbers together, so 2.4 divided by 9.6. And then our 10 to the power of minus 6 divided by 10 to the power of minus 8. Let's do the left-hand side together. So 2.4 divided by 9.6. If this was a non-calculator exam, what we would do is, I like to write it as 2.4 over 9.6. And then what I would do here is I would multiply the top and bottom by 10 so that I can turn it into a whole number. So we get 24 over 96. And then I would simplify the fraction. So 24 and 96, off the bat, I know it's divisible by 24, but if we didn't know, we can see that, okay, these numbers are divisible by 2. So 24 divided by 2 is 12, and 96 divided by 2 is 48. Then we may see that, oh, okay, 48 is in the 12 times table, so we can divide that by 12. So 12 divided by 12 is 1. And 48 divided by 12 is 4. So we get a quarter. A quarter in decimals is 0.4. 0.25. Okay, so 0.25 is our left-hand side, so that bit here. Now to work out what this one's going to be, when we have powers of the same base, we subtract the powers from each other. So essentially we're going to do, so our 10, we're going to do -6 minus -8. Because we've got two minuses, so two negatives makes a positive, so we'll then turn into -6 plus 8. -6 plus 8 is 2, so it will be 0.25 times 10 to the power of 2. But is that in standard form? No, it isn't, because if we remember, the A bit, so this bit to the left-hand side needs to be between it needs to be between 1 and 10, and 0.25 is way smaller than that. So what we are going to do then is we need to turn this 0.25 into 2.5. But if we're going to turn that into 2.5, that means that we'd have to just times by 10 to the power of 1, essentially. Because 0.25 times 10 to the power of 2, if we move the decimal place 2 times to the right, we get 25. If we want to start from 2.5 to get to 25, we only need to times by 10 once. Okay, now we're going to look at adding powers, or adding standard form, I mean. So when we add standard forms, there are two methods you can do it. So you can essentially turn these numbers into ordinary numbers, or, which I prefer anyway, is to essentially make them have the same powers to 10. So essentially what we're going to do is we're going to turn this 10 to the power of 3 to 10 to the power of 4. So let's look at 6.6 times 10 to the power of 3. If we want to turn that to the power of 4, that means that we need to make this 6.6 a little bit smaller. Well, one smaller, one decimal place smaller. So that means that will turn into 0.66 times 10 to the power of 4. Why? Because if we do 6.6 times 10 to the power of 3, the power of 3 means that we move the decimal place 3 times, and because it's a positive integer, we move the decimal place to the right. So it would be 1, 2, 3. So we get 6,600, right? If we start from 0.66, to get to that 6,600, we have to move the decimal place how many times? So 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 units to the left, meaning that if we want to times 10 to the power of 4 for this one here, we have to change this 6.6 to 0.66. Okay, so now that our powers of 10s are the same, we do kind of a similar thing to what we did for our adding and multiplying and dividing fractions. So what we're going to do is we're going to, did I say fractions? I meant standard forms. Don't know why I said that. So what we're going to do is essentially put the front numbers together, so the 9.8 and the 0.66, and we're going to add those two numbers together. So do 9.8 plus 0.66. And because the powers of 10 is the same, we're still going to keep it as it is, essentially. So then we just work out what 9.8 plus 0.66 is, which is 10.46 times 10 to the power of 4. But this is not in standard form because our number here to the left, that 10.46, needs to be between 1 and 10. And as 10.46 is above 10, it's not in standard form. So what we need to do is turn this into 1.046. And in order to do that, we have to times that by 10 to the power of 5. Okay, this one here. So now we've got this one. So we've got 4.2 times 10 to the power of 7 minus 6.1 times 10 to the power of 6. Similar thing, what we do, we're going to turn this power of 10 to the power of, power of 6 to the power of 7. So 6.1 times 10 to the power of 6, okay? If you want to turn that to the power of 7, that means that our 6.1 will have to turn into 0.61, essentially. Okay. So 0.61 times 10 to the power of 7. And then I add that one back in. Again, same thing that we do. So essentially we're going to do 4.2 subtract 0.61. And because they're both to the same 10 to the power of 7, we're going to keep that the same. So we're going to do 4.2 subtract 0.61, which we get as 3.59 times 10 to the power of 7. And is this in standard form? Let's see. Yes, because our number, our 3.59, is between 1 and 10. So it is already in standard form. Well done. Good. Lovely.